Ida, what a pleasure to do this interview with you, and I'm always fascinated about you, not only as an artist, but as a human being. And for me, it's really fascinating to see that the way you are in real life, that's what we hear in your music. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, maybe the way we behave and what we do professionally, maybe it does reflect, especially when you're a musician. Maybe it does show who you are inside. I would like to believe that, because music is something that we have to be so honest about. There is nothing to hide. If you are hiding something, it does come through.
Absolutely.
In the performance. And as I always said many, many, many times, when people say all these wonderful things to me, my answer is only one, and I always keep saying it until I guess people are bored to tears. They think it's boring. For me, the music is the composer. And obviously, of course, the composer has to have an instrument to perform the composition. But where would we be without the composer? So I think really, in reality, the greatest genius is the composer, and it's the most difficult thing to achieve, to please the composer.
I see, it's very interesting because since I've known you, I'm constantly fascinated with your personality and your views of life. And you're such a positive and happy person, and you can be so joyful and funny, but it's always very, very impressive for me to see that when you take your violin and you play, there is something so, there is such a reverence for what you do, and the experience for the people that hear you is just very spiritual, because there is such no-nonsense kind of an attitude, such a serious and honest kind of, we can feel that reverence that you feel for the composers.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I'm trying to project that because, as I always say, my greatest respect and admiration, and as I call, this is the expression, they are awesome. That's what I borrowed from the Americans. The composers are awesome because everything, in a sense, is an imitation. The whole of life, whatever we do, say art, if we think in terms of literature, it's copying life. Every expression, every description, it's an imitation of something, except the note. That note that comes from the spirit of the composer is unique and just one, because you cannot copy it. It comes from the composer, and that's where it stays. I'm not talking about plagiarism or something like that. Of course, that's something else. But the actual composition becomes the sole creation of the composer. And this is what I find so fascinating every time, and so moving.
When you look at your life, when you look back, and you see where you are today, how do you feel?
I don't, quite honestly, to be very, very honest, I don't think about myself at all. In other words, it's not what I achieved. It's not what I accomplished. I believe that my life has not changed all that much from days gone by. The only thing that I pursue is to improve and the excellence of the actual playing and the excellence of trying to reach the level of the composers that I'm performing. I believe that's probably the most difficult thing to do. If we think in terms of contemporary composers, well, then I can go to a contemporary composer, play to him or to her, with a few exceptions, and say, is this exactly what you wanted? So I have an answer. How do I talk to Beethoven or Brahms or Bach to ask him or them what is the right interpretation? It's almost always guessing. Of course, the score we have in front of us, so we are trying probably to fit what we see in the score, but we really have no answer. It's just intuition.
When you you've gone through almost all the repertoire for the violin, and when you take a piece that you played, let's say in your 20s, and you play it now, you know, how do you approach the same piece after so many years?
Very interesting question and very valuable, because I would say that we never stop learning. In other words, something that I had played 1,000 times, every time I take that score and I look at it, I find new information. It's a never-ending source of education. So, totally inexhaustible. It means that these were the greatest geniuses. We are just a tool that we are trying to satisfy the composition. But for me, I don't want to repeat myself again and again, the same thing is always non-stop, that when I take my violin and I look into a score, I said, my God, I missed this yesterday. I didn't see yesterday what it really means. And it's a never-ending source of education. So I say, who were these people? Amazing, simply amazing.
I see such a degree of humility, really. I've watched you rehearse with your collaborators, with Misha and others. And I was really very touched to see how sensitive and how tactful and how humble you are, you know, when it comes to music. And when you never impose your things, you just suggest things that you feel that are important. And it's a quality that not many artists today have. There's no arrogance, you know, that's what I feel.
Well, I have to, it's a very easy answer, because I would not condescend. I don't want to use that word because it's maybe not appropriate. But I do choose my collaborators. And if I don't respect them to the highest degree, I wouldn't perform with them. So that's the first issue for me, to find a collaborator that I trust and I respect and I listen to what they are doing, and I'm capable, which I think I'm paying this compliment to myself. If I see that the interpretation of that performer, my partner, is saying something different and more profound than I saw it, I'm fully prepared to change my concept very quickly. But I have to be convinced that this is so. And very often, as I said, I'm very lucky because I do choose the most talented people to perform with. So that's the answer.
I also feel that you are so secure and so comfortable with yourself that you have no fears of like discovering new things. You know, you never say, you know, I play this and this is it. You know, you always find ways of looking, like you say, at the score and finding and discovering new things, which I don't think is the case really with a lot of the younger performers. You know, it's not the same attitude.
You are absolutely right. You use the right terminology to say, and I'm going to be quite arrogant, because it's all about being truthful. yes, I am secure. If I wouldn't feel secure when I pick up that violin, that I know I can play the violin quite well, and I know what I'm about to do on that violin, consulting the composer and the score in front of me, I wouldn't do it. So your description that I am secure, yes, I have to acknowledge that. Otherwise, I wouldn't lower myself by playing and not being secure. I don't believe in it. It's really true. I've heard some musicians, specifically violinists, when it really sounded very insecure, and I'm not comfortable with that. If you don't know the piece, if you are not master of your instrument, don't do it.
I also feel that a lot of the younger artists, not only violinists, pianists, cellists, they are really not that careful when it comes to reading the score. They really are not reading between the lines. Sometimes they imitate others, or they just play. They practice with that. A lot of people, I feel, don't use their intelligence and their ears. Very few people today really know how to listen, and how important every detail on the music is. And this is my experience, knowing you and talking about music is just so magnificent, because I see how you pay attention to every note, every detail, everything is important for you. And I don't hear that in most of the performances.
Well, maybe there are several answers to that. But the one that is very important is there are two things, and I don't have to tell you because you yourself are such a marvelous teacher and you a musician, everything. So I don't have to tell you, but I'm saying it to the world. There are two things that are extremely important in rendering a piece of music. To be able to hear yourself so objectively,
Yes.
as if you would be listening to somebody in a distance and a total stranger. How to use your hearing aid here, I'm going to call it that, and to be able to analyze what you yourself are doing on that instrument. That's what some are not capable of achieving. It's not only to be critical of someone else, be critical just in the same way of yourself and the capacity of hearing what you are doing. Maybe it's because you are very close, so you are not capable of such observation, but it's terribly important, because don't mislead yourself. You think maybe you are doing everything so wonderfully well, maybe it's not so. So the question is, when you play something, the experiment, take a recording or a tape and listen to yourself. Do you trust that tape 100% that it's really what you have done? That's a question, because you have a microphone, you have acoustics. There's so many issues. And also, when you have a violin next to your ear, maybe with the piano is a little different. Is it? There is more distance.
Yes.
More distance. So the distance helps you in a sense. With the fiddle, it's right under your ear. So maybe sometimes you are even misled by what you hear. It's too close to be able to judge.